At Impact, we frame leadership as being about action. And today's example is one of the most extreme I've come across. My guest today is Chris Blade. Chris has spent most of his career in glassmaking, and for the last decade, he's been CEO of Cumbria Crystal, the UK's last remaining manufacturer of luxury English crystal. Recently, he made the very unusual decision to step down from that role to help protect jobs. We're going to cover questions every leader is wrestling with right now: rising costs, talent pipelines, and they go somewhere a bit different, looking at leadership when skills are critically endangered. And your responsibility goes beyond the business itself. I'm very grateful he's given us his time today. So, Chris, welcome to In Good Company. How are you?
Very fine. Thank you very much, and delighted to be here with you.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. I know you're busy, and we appreciate you giving us your time. For those that maybe haven't come across your story recently in the news, maybe you could spend the next 60 seconds telling us about yourself.
Oh, well, I've been CEO of Cumbria Crystal for the last 11 years. I came in from an arts background, actually, although I trained as a glassmaker, having done a degree and a master's degree at the Royal College of Art in glass, run my own small manufacturing businesses, which I set up in the 80s at the South Bank Centre,
Hmm.
excuse me, with support from the Prince's Youth Trust. Um, Moved in during the recession in the 90s to becoming a lecturer, teaching art and design, and ended up running HND courses and BA courses in entrepreneurship and three-dimensional design for 18 years. I eventually decided that I could do some other things in my life and became an adventure travel photographer, traveling around the world
Yeah.
for 3 years, um, and selling my photographs in exchange for travel to some British overlanding companies.
Hmm.
Eventually, I decided that probably enough was enough of that, and took a role at the National Glass Centre in Sunderland that has
Hmm.
been in the news recently. When I joined as part of the senior management team, we merged with the University of Sunderland there to take over the National Glass Centre,
Right.
and they have run it ever since. I was there for 6 years, and I was involved with the manufacture and working with artists on the production of about 500 bespoke projects for various creative people.
Mm.
And then later on in the end, I was invited to join Cumbria Crystal to try and turn around its fortunes. It's
Hmm.
been a company, it's 50 years old this year, but it's been struggling for a long time.
Hmm.
The history of British glass shows that.
Mm.
That's the same story for every British glass manufacturer. And so for the last 11 years, I've worked on trying to transform the company with very limited resources.
Mm. Well, let's dive into that then, because yes, as I mentioned as we started there, this your recent sort of stepping down as CEO hit the news as well, as a bit of an unusual step to help protect jobs, but one that certainly caught the eyes of the media. So why don't you tell us a bit more about that story? What Tell us what happened, what led to that decision?
Well, that's a very difficult decision to take,
Mm.
of course. Um, the I guess the first thing to do is talk a little bit about why I would even be prepared to make a decision like that. Um, I, Basically, is because I'm absolutely passionate about the survival of craftsmanship in Britain,
Mm.
particularly glass, which my whole working life has been in. The Cumbria Crystal being the last of its type makes it this even more poignant to make sure this company survives.
Mm.
Crystal has been made in Britain since 1686, and Britain led the world in cut crystal and lead crystal. So to be the last of its type, to me, is personally important to try and make sure that that business survives and those skills, which take a lifetime to acquire, by the way, actually
Mm.
can be passed on to future generations. So that's the context. The company itself is very small. It's only at the moment 20 odd people.
Mhm.
Um, and it is the last bastion of British production craftsmanship in the UK. So having seen even in my in the last few decades, the loss of companies such as Edinburgh Crystal, Stuart Crystal, there was hundreds of household names that have all disappeared. It becomes imperative, to me anyway, that I am prepared to do whatever's necessary to help keep this company going.
Mm-hmm.
The company is privately owned, so it's, as I said, it's 50 years old this year, but it's privately owned and was bought out of receivership about 25 years ago
Mm-hmm.
by a local businessman who has tried to support the company over the past 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
The company has actually done remarkably well over the last 11 years. We've seen big improvements in productivity. We've seen individual um, productivity for people going up. Our yields have gone up. Our turnover has gone up 400%. But everything else has also seemed as conspired to make it very, very difficult for the company to keep sort of swimming against the tide, really.
Mm-hmm.
We feel like salmon a lot of the time. So, whilst we've made quite good progress, considering there's had almost no resource to put into the company, um, everything, all our running costs and
Yeah.
everything associated with running the business have sort of kept coming at us as well. To give you an example of what that looks like, our every business will recognize this at the moment. We're
Mm.
not unique, but we are a small business with high energy costs. It uses a lot of energy to make glass.
Yeah.
Um, but our gas bills, for example, when we run two big glass furnaces, traditional furnaces,
Mm.
have gone from November 2024, £8,000 a month,
Mm-hmm.
which is a lot for any small business,
Yeah.
but they're now sitting there around about £40,000 a month, 40.
Yeah. It's crazy.
The electricity costs have gone in the same period from about 2,000 a month to about five. Then you add all the other pressures that every other business is facing, but 3 years worth of national minimum wage increases of 10%, um, and staff salaries was our number one cost.
Mm.
Um, these compound to just to work against us. So the company requires hugely skilled staff. This is the thing. We do not automate our productivity. Everything we do is handmade. Our USP, unique selling point, is that we use traditional glassmaking processes, which in many
Mm.
cases are nearly 1,000 years old, invented by the Romans. We still use those today, and we make the very best crystal that can be handmade, possibly using
Mm.
traditional processes. And that means we have to rely and invest in the staff. And that is where our costs also lie.
Mm.
It takes 15 years to train a glassblower. And the analogy I always use is because they have to work in teams, if you have an orchestra and your glassblowers were part of an orchestra, one person who's out of tune or not a very good glassmaker or experienced glassmaker, it'll be very, very noticeable. Everything will fail.
Mm.
So 15 years to train a glass blower, and you need a team of them to be able to make a piece of glass.
Yeah.
5 years to train a glass cutter. There are, to my knowledge, only 8 glass cutters remaining in the United Kingdom. So the skills and the retention of those skills is absolutely paramount for us. So,
And well, that was going to be my next question actually, because I mean, one thing is part of the we sort of had a call before ahead of this recording, just to kind of learn a bit more from you. And
mm,
the one of the things you mentioned there was that cut crystal glassmaking is on the red list of critically endangered crafts. That's correct terminology, isn't it?
that is
Um,
correct. Yes.
and
Yes.
I suppose it's that thing of, can't help but feeling that if it was an endangered species and not a trade, we'd probably hear more about it, which is, but I guess the skills that you're talking about, why do they matter economically, not just culturally? Is it that 15-year process that puts people off? Do you think, or is there another reason why you think new people aren't coming through?
I think there's a whole myriad of reasons actually.
Mm.
15 years. I mean, they say, don't they, that normally to become good at something you need 10,000 hours of practice.
Mm.
Um, so there's not many people who have the opportunity to be able to get into even try glass blowing, let alone develop their skills enough to be employable.
Mm.
But that's not your question here. That we've got that one coming later. So I would say that these skills matter economically and not just culturally, because if we lose these skills in Britain, you can probably never regain them. These are
Mm.
skills that have been generated and learnt and passed down from generation to generation over hundreds of years. If those skills go, then we will not get them back, or it will be incredibly difficult. But more important, those skills underpin a lot of other areas. So I did a little bit of things, knowing I was going to be on this. I did some research, and um, I've realised that thinking about it in more detail, craft skills, and I'm talking about craft skills here, they underpin a lot of other industries. So without craftsmen and women, you will not have luxury goods. You will not
Mhm.
have galleries selling work. You will not have all of the type of things that go through supporting to the tourist industries and the wider economic needs of the country. Um, in 2024, the Crafts Council actually did some research and published a list um, of what the craft skills in this country contribute to the general economy. And
Mhm.
so this is 10 years ago. Then it was 3.4 billion pounds a year,
Wow.
and that's coming from only 10,000 craft practitioners, and they support about 150,000 people in jobs. That's
Mm.
just crafts. If you then look at the creative industries as a whole, of which crafts is part of it, but the broader creative industries, which is important in Britain anyway, that research from last year, produced by the government, shows that the creative industries generate 145 billion pounds last year in Britain. So if we lose skills, creativity, and the opportunity to feed into that area, we
Mm.
lose a massive part of the support of the financial support for Britain. I think in last year, 5.5% of GVA. So you need to keep these skills coming through because the creativity, the masterminding of ideas and projects
Mm.
that Britain is famous for actually relies on this. But one other thing I'd say is going back to craft. Indeed, many crafts people, artists, and people of that ilk, they work in very often work in more smaller, remote, rural areas
Yeah.
where their impact on the economy in that area is far more pronounced than you might really realise. So it trickles through into tourism and all sorts of things as well.
Mm. And I suppose, so we're absolutely clear, because I mean, there might be people watching or listening to this that maybe don't, they hear of glass blowing and cutting and things,
Mm,
and maybe don't. And we're talking about on a sort of industrial scale, aren't we? To a point, rather than, because there will be, I'm sure there are a lot of independent glass blowers and cutters
there
that.
are.
And going back to the earlier question, like, is it, how easy or not is it to upskill those people? Does that 15-year period, say did a recruitment drive to independents that are out there, is it as simple as reaching out to those people and they've
Mm.
already got a certain level of expertise? Is it then
If
easier to train them up
If
to
only.
the right
I
level?
mean, it's great. I mean, there the university. I mean, since there is almost nowhere to train to learn
Mm.
how to become a production glass blower, for
Mm.
example, today, then the only route that is really available for people is to become self-employed.
Hmm.
So many people who are fascinated by glass blowing would end up actually choosing to be self-employed, and they will make one-off pieces or small batch production pieces, all of which will generally be different.
Right.
So we're not looking at what we do, which is we're making collections of crystal tableware and barware to go on our dining table, and people expect them to be the same. So people assess our work by saying, "Oh, this piece looks exactly the same as that piece." But
Mm.
actually every single piece has to be handmade. It's
Mm.
like trying to have, say you buy half a dozen glasses, half a dozen identical children. They, even if they're identical, there will be every single piece being handmade will be
Yeah.
slightly different. Now, the production processes that we use in making the type of glass we do, which is lead crystal bar and stemware, is different to the processes that the artisan glass blowers use. And
Hmm.
so, whilst they have the skills that can help be useful to come across, they don't have the refinement of those skills. They with mold blowing and making things exactly the same. So there are differences. Brilliant start, but it still takes years of
Mm.
additional training to be able to do that. What I do at the moment to try and help people um, is we try and recruit students straight out from university who've been learning glass blowing,
Hmm.
and we try and give them a job. They will not have the skills to be really to be useful for us at all for a number of years.
Mm.
But one thing I introduced in the company was glass blowing experiences
Hmm.
inside the factory. So the public who are welcome to come and visit the company can come in and they can actually have a go at blowing glass themselves
Mm.
with one of these young graduates, so a sort of early career glass artist. Um, and those glass artists are getting hours and hours and hours every week in front of a furnace. So because of the cut-in resource in universities these days and the cost of delivering glass blowing and cutting and everything, um, many students may be only getting between 1 and 3 hours a week in front of a furnace these days
Mm.
if they're on a BA course. Um, the students who come and work with us will get the equivalent of 3 years worth of access to a furnace probably within their first month. So there is a fantastic learning opportunity that we
Mm.
provide, and it generates a revenue stream for us, and it feeds into the local
Mm.
Cumbrian tourist agenda. But we know that those people are never going to stay because the people who want to stay and work in a production factory have a very different mindset to the
Mm.
people who work and see themselves as glass blowers as their profession and don't really want to make different things. So
Mm.
there's this is the how the creative industries is really interesting.
Yeah.
People have lots and lots of different ideas.
Yeah. It's probably worth at this point bringing this to life a little bit more because there's a high chance that people will have seen Cumbria Crystal's products more than they maybe realised
Mhm.
because they've featured on screen both Downton Abbey being
Mm.
one of the top ones, and of course James Bond. It just so happens that in my possession just here, I have
Oh, you've got one.
the James Bond whiskey tumbler. This is the right one, I think. Is it? Am I right? It's the Grassmere collection. Is that correct?
It's yes, it's from our most famous collection, which is the Grassmere collection,
Mm.
designed by Lady
Sadly, I haven't got any
Cavendish.
whiskey in it, which is a shame. But
Later on.
yeah,
Up
maybe
when this is
later on.
over.
Yeah, but yeah, it's. I mean, in terms of the knowing the detail that this is, of course,
Mm,
hand blown and hand cut, and from what you were saying about how on a industry level, on a production level, they have all got to be identical. You know, it is. I mean, it is incredible the craftsmanship that goes. I'm being very careful with it, but because
A lot of people
everything,
don't. A lot of people don't appreciate when we say cutting, what we mean.
mm,
The diamond pattern that you can see sparkling there, that
yeah,
is carved in by hand on a diamond wheel.
mm,
So that to make that glass from start to finish is between 10 to 12 days and
wow,
passes through the hands of almost every artisan in the factory. Um, Whereas if it's mass produced, it'll be maybe pressed into a mold and it'll be pushed out and they'll be made by the thousand.
yeah,
Um, so it's very different. But these and this collection, it was the Grassmere collection that was featured in every episode and every film from Downton Abbey,
right,
um, all the way through from the very first one, and just absolutely fantastic for Cumbria Crystal.
mm.
Uh,
And
Aligning,
how does that come about then? How do you? I
mm,
mean, do you reach out or do they approach you? You know, how does a cut glass from the northwest of the UK end up in the hands
yeah.
of Daniel Craig, for example?
Well, it works both ways. So every year we send him some for his birthday.
Oh, right.
You know, that's just a by the by. But the impact he's had on the Cumbria Crystal and
Mm,
Downton Abbey, and you know, Piers Brosnan as Bond was also used our glasses,
right.
as did Judy Dench as well. Um, and we've been in a myriad of other films as well, just loads of them. So it's not just that, but Daniel Craig, of course, is probably the iconic one. It comes about with filmmakers need props,
Hmm.
and if they want to show luxury living, quality craftsmanship, sort of symbolize success um, and luxury lifestyle, then really one of the ways you can do that is by what you drink from and how you socialize.
Mm.
And people often do that through wine or whiskey or water or whatever it may be. Um, so there's a big industry in hiring props. Now, what I've done is, I've done it much more actively in the last few years, is set up a full hire service for the film industry so they can hire Crystal, if we
Right.
have any, um, available for props. Because for us, aligning with a brand such as Bond or aligning with a brand such as Downton Abbey or many other films, or even with companies such as Bentley, who we work with.
Hmm.
Um, that is one of the best ways we can get international marketing.
Yeah.
As being
Yeah.
such a small company, we cannot. Our marketing budget was like 10 grand a year or something
Mm.
ridiculous. So what can we do instead? Well, we can talk about the relationship we have with various people. So initially, some of them just came to us because there's nowhere else left in Britain, really,
Mm.
to get
Mm.
luxury crystal. You can buy stuff from elsewhere, but it does, even on the big screen, you can see the difference. Let alone when
Definitely.
you
Well,
come
I
and
mean,
actually hold
I
it.
happen to catch I mean, obviously, I've got it here in person, and like even just it shimmering off the lights that we've got here,
Hmm.
that on screen on a, in the cinema of it's, or yeah, watching, catching, and you can absolutely see this on the table of Downton Abbey. It just, well, I mean, maybe not the whiskey one, but certainly I
Mm.
had a look at the same in the wine, in the stem collection. I'm getting my terminology right. Um, it's, yeah, the way it catches the light's incredible. I mean, I would imagine that only comes really from the cut process. But
That
yeah,
comes
just
from
I mean,
that,
even
and the
every single
weight as well.
depth. Yeah, every single depth of every single cut that's in there, all of the, I'm looking at the bottom, all of the things, all of the cuts here, they all reach and to the fact that it takes 10 days to make one glass is incredible, really. So yeah, I'm going to stop handling it now, just in case I drop it on this very hard floor.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it's what, and stories to tell. I mean, it's great to be able to. I would imagine the first time that a product was seen on screen will have been a very proud moment for particularly the people that have made them, and put all their heart and soul into it, to be able to see that in such big
we love it. We
features.
love it.
Yeah,
There's those ones there with the diamond cut. The diamond. At the factory we only have 3 glass cutters. So
right.
every piece of crystal that is made in the company is cut by 3 people.
Mm,
Now, I can tell you that the diamonds there have been cut. Every single one of those glasses, every piece in Downton Abbey, was cut either by Robert or Yitka,
mm.
2 of our glass cutters. I could look at that and tell you which of those people actually cut that
Oh,
piece.
really?
The action and the interaction with humans and human skill
Mm,
is measurable in those tiny nuances within the piece.
that's amazing. I better move us on from James Bond. As much as I could talk about that for quite some time, let's talk about some current realities. You mentioned before
Mm.
about the costs, about running. We're talking well over £40,000 a month just to fire up the equipment needed to make these glasses. Um, so what, in terms of, and it's important to note also, which I feel like we should have mentioned earlier, is that you're still involved in the company despite taking the bet. That's correct, isn't it? That you're
I am involved in a backseat role, so I've
backseat, yeah.
stepped away completely from the daily management of the company.
Mm,
Um, so I have no longer that. We've gone to a flat management structure, um, and I'm taking on some role, which is some consultative roles to try and support the company, working in development of new trade orders where we can,
mhm,
and particularly with some of our bigger clients, um, and also looking at various other little projects. So consultancy and a brand ambassadorship role.
mm, mm.
but I'm doing that all very much now in very few hours, really.
Mm,
Um, the object is to save the company money, and whilst I'll do everything I can to bring in new custom to the company, because that's frankly what it needs to see it through the current economic climate, the trading climate, particularly with the with what's going on in the Middle East.
mhm,
Um, but also now I can step back and I can do some other things myself, which are personal things. So
mm,
I'm doing some mentoring with some young people in entrepreneur wishing to set up first businesses. I work with Be the Business as an ambassador for them, trying to help SMEs across Britain get impartial, free advice to support themselves. Um, and I'm an entrepreneur in residence at Lancaster University, although I'm not very often in residence, I have to confess.
mhm,
Um, and I'm going back to one of my passions because I was a creative person myself, which is photography,
mhm,
and just had a small exhibition just over the last weekend, and I'm going to be doing more with refugees and people in Portraiture. So I'm going to do
yeah.
some of my creative things, but I really still passionate about making sure that Cumbria Crystal gets through the challenges ahead, and then maybe the roles change again. But at the moment, there is no room for me to have a major role in the company.
Mhm. It's, I mean, clearly very passionate about it, the company and making sure it survives. And I wanted to circle back to, the sort of main story of um, the decision to step away as CEO, um, eh, to help save jobs. We introduced that as a sort of an active leadership at Impact Upwards. That's how we reframe leadership, rather than looking at it as a sort of a special type of person, but instead looking at it as a special type of action. And and so, yeah, arguably, what you did could be seen as an active leadership, as a kind of, I don't know, maybe as a sort of analogy to. Often we hear the captain going down with the ship. Well, it's almost the opposite, where you've jumped the ship to help save the people, because that was the action that could save the people left behind. Um, the I suppose, there will be people listening to this that thinks, and particularly if we as we looked at, leaving it as a sort of a flat management approach. The the I suppose not every CEO is going to be listening to this and going, "Well, that's not our reality. We can't just. It's not as simple as just up and leaving." I'm curious to kind of get your take on, like, what you see where you see the future of the company going based on your decision to step back, and the as I suppose there's another part of it, that's that there's an element of the sort of, we talked about this as well before, about that sort of protest as well. I wanted to get your take on that, like, as a message out there to the wider world of, like, if we don't do something about the saving of this now, what where does that sit with you?
Well, many people would say it's ridiculous that the CEO should stand back and cast the ship adrift
Mm,
without someone at the helm. Um, but we don't really have a lot of choice. Um,
mm,
the company cannot sustain for very long the overheads that we have without laying off staff, which is as I said, our largest expenditure. Therefore, the only large, relatively sizable chunk of money available to the company is my salary.
mhm,
Now, a ship with enough momentum will carry on in a direction for quite a long time. You hear about those cruise liners or ships that take, 10 miles to turn around or something.
mm,
Um, so it is possible for the company to carry on, providing we can bring some of the work in.
mm,
There are some fantastic opportunities. I mean, the company makes all the crystal for the British embassies and consulates around the world. We are the
right.
brand ambassador for those. We have that job. We are working with I can't tell you who, a Hollywood A-lister, for the launch of some products that will very hopefully come off later this year, and that alone could turn around the fortunes of the
Mm,
company
mm,
if that comes off, which is looking likely that there'll be very positive benefits from it. And also, we're working with Bentley Motors, who I've personally worked with for the last 8 years, and we are feeding work ideas inspired by Cumbria Crystal into every new electric car that is going to be produced by Bentley from the first ones come out at the end of this year, from now on. And so we are looking at various ways of partnering further with them,
Mm.
because organizations, this goes back to that partnership and why skills are important. Bentley want to come back. They've got the most wonderful engineering in the world. They want to come back and bring back craftsmanship into it. They want the human
Mm.
interaction, the fingerprint of human engagement with it as well. Now, if some of these things come off, which are looking very likely, this will put the company back on a secure footing, as well as providing branding, brand awareness, marketing opportunities. And that will encourage people such as you, me, our friends, family, to wish to buy maybe Cumbria Crystal as a special gift for somebody, because we
Mm.
sell individual pieces via our website and ship globally. So by doing that, we can hopefully therefore bring the resource to the company which we cannot currently get. The company is too small, our overheads are too high to be able to borrow to invest,
Mhm.
or for that matter, to grow quickly. So therefore, some of this can make a compelling enough story that we can either get some investment in, more investment in, or we have security that we can slowly start to grow the workforce again. And that will then boost our
Yeah.
capacity, because at the
Yeah.
moment we are reliant completely on staff skills.
Mm.
Everything about the company is staff skills. Without the skills of the staff, there is no company. I mean, the
Yeah.
equipment's important, but frankly, a lot of our equipment is very old, and our productivity could be improved with newer, more modern equipment. Most of it's 50 years old.
Mm.
Um, but the productivity could be improved, but the only key thing is the staff.
Yeah.
So the this is the life support machine to take us through to pull off these contracts, which are looking very likely, but
Mm.
we have to get through to that stage because some of these things are a slow burn as well.
Mm. Mm. I mean, it's fascinating. I feel like I've learnt so much, even in this past half an hour, about an industry I've seemingly had no idea about before. Um, and on the spirit of learning, like, what would your message, if anything, like, if other CEOs can learn something from you based on this conversation, um, and imagining that these sort of lessons can be applied in any sector, um, what would be a lesson to other CEOs from you?
Um, well, it's very difficult. I think. I mean, this is one of the world's is such is such a, in many ways, a thankless job. Doesn't matter what you do, you're always wrong. Somebody
Right.
will disagree with you. It doesn't matter. You cannot please everybody. So I think that the first thing I would say, and I'm talking more about smaller SMEs, is that you will never please everybody.
Mhm.
And you just have to accept that. And you have to have the courage of your convictions to do what you believe is right. Um, I think that over the years I've been working, I mean, I come from an arts background. I trained to be a creative, not to be a business person. Although I've been done various business courses over my time, and I'm reasonable at it. Um, Without my specialist knowledge, I wouldn't be, I would be only half able to do my job. But without the support of places like Lancaster University Business Management School and the support they've given me over the years, I would probably not be able to do what I do now to support Cumbria Crystal. But one thing I've recognized in all the 11 years I've been there is every owner I've met, or CEO, managing director, whoever, almost everybody suffers from imposter syndrome.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's something which is really important. That that everybody thinks, really, should I be here? Can I do this? Is this the right thing to do? They worry. And I think that what I've realized is how much support is out there if you're prepared to ask for it, to
Mm.
help businesses, particularly small businesses, to share their ideas, their worries, their concerns, to explore various options. And so I think that just acknowledging everyone everyone to some degree has some form of imposter syndrome. Everybody can probably benefit from sharing that in a deep trust network.
Mm,
So I think getting a deep trust network of people you're prepared to talk to confidentially about the challenges any business faces is
mm.
probably the thing I think is really, really important.
Well, another avenue to go down is to I guess a bit of a shameless plug, but is to look at providers like us, I suppose, because we have that's where executive coaching can come in so useful as well.
Yeah.
So it was almost like you set me up there, which you didn't do intentionally, but I was going to take it.
No,
Um, but
you're
yeah, no,
absolutely, yeah.
I think that's absolutely right. You know, especially liked what you said about the imposter syndrome. I mean, I would imagine that's that rife within anybody that particularly finds themselves working either or maybe coming into an organization from outside of it, and or looking at people that have worked their way up through the business.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's going to be there in some way, shape, or form, particularly in the early days, I would think. Um, and yeah, to navigate that, and as you say, to find those people that you can really lean into to trust, I think is really important. So yeah, some good observations there.
Well, I'm glad I helped you with that, but I can't say how isolated you can feel if you're running a business if you don't have these networks.
Yeah,
And
it's
it
true.
is just amazing the difference that a deep trust network or any form of network in knowing people and sharing and then
Mm,
recognizing we're all effectively in the same boat.
yeah.
It's just a great if the boat might be a bit bigger, prettier, might be a bit more battered, but we're essentially all at sea trying to navigate the most cruel and difficult economic climate I think
Mm,
we've seen for a very, very long time.
yes, it's true. The it's certainly tough, and it doesn't look like it's getting any easier in the immediate future, for sure.
Mm,
Just very quickly before we, because we're almost at the end of our questions. So I have two more for you. Final one for sort of the main theme of this episode is if a leader that's listening to this on the subject of those critical skills that we've been talking about a lot through this episode,
mm.
in order to if there was something that they could do differently tomorrow to protect those critical skills in their organization, what would be your advice to tell them to focus on?
Well, I think you've sort of answered that question. The protection of critical skills is the key
Mm,
thing. Creating opportunities where knowledge can be transferred and passed on, I think is hugely important. Although, frankly, people like your insurance company probably don't want people to let people in, um, which is a issue we have. Um, but I think that creating opportunities to pass on those skills wherever possible to make people aware. For example, at Cumbria Crystal, I'm a graduate from the Royal College of Art. Um, every year, I run a project with students, 8 students from the Royal College of Art doing MAs or PhDs, to
mhm,
come up to Cumbria Crystal, spend 3 days with us, learning how to mark, how to cut crystal, how to design for production, for handmade production. We set a project where they go away and they design something, and if we like it, we put it into production and we give them royalties for 3 years to help them in their early career work.
right. Yeah.
We're the only place in the country where they have the opportunity to do that. It
Wow.
costs us, but it's worth doing because over the last few years, I've just I did a sum the other day. We've done over 70 people have come through and have learned something about how to design for cut crystal. So in small ways, we can do things. Um, but I think it is hugely difficult just recognizing that skills are the most important thing. And if
Mm,
you lose those skills, you don't have a business. You can't scale it. You can't do anything. Um,
yeah.
so that's the key thing. I mean, if you're going to do something, I always say, I'm not so good at it, but if you're going to fail, fail fast. So try
Yeah.
something out, change. If it doesn't work, pull the plug on it and just go, well,
Yeah.
we're not all right all the time. So, but to keep trying and to try to approach any problem from multiple angles.
Yeah. Yeah. Every failure is a learning opportunity. Um, is
Then
definitely
you learn more from
rings
failure
true there.
than you do
Yeah,
from
that's very true.
success.
Yeah, that's very true. Um, Well, Chris, I could ask you thousands more questions, but we have reached the end of our episode today. But before I do let you go, I do have one final question to you, which is one we ask all of our guests on this podcast, which is, if you had the opportunity to speak to your younger self before you embarked on your career, what would be the best piece of advice you'd give yourself?
Well, I really struggle with this question. I think the best piece of advice would be to believe in yourself, to take the risks. I mean, I know when I set up my very first business on the South Bank in the railway arches next to the South Bank Centre in London, where the
Hmm.
London Eye is now, we had a derelict railway arches there. I was not brave enough to put all my savings, which wasn't very much, on the line to buy the equipment I needed to get through and do what I needed to do in an efficient way. So I would say believe in yourself, do it, and do not be shy, because
Mm.
what is the worst thing that someone can say to you is probably no, we can't help you, or no, we're not interested. But what's worse than that is not ever asking anybody in the first place. Whether you're trying to sell something or an idea or a product, whatever it is. So just go out there and just be prepared to have people say no, because sooner or later somebody will say yes. I would
Yeah.
say now that's what I want. I want for Cumbria Crystal, we want investors. We want
Mm.
somebody who's prepared to come in, overlook that, and recognize that there is an opportunity to support to 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 the last crystal company left in Britain, one that is on par with Lalique and Baccarat, some of the most well-known and successful crystal companies in the world, worth hundreds of millions of pounds as
Mm.
companies. In Ulverston, tiny little town,
Yeah.
we have that here.
Yeah.
So, going out there, getting, like for us, apprenticeships. By the way, I didn't mention this, but I meant to mention this early. No,
Well, now's your
there is
chance.
there is no support for apprenticeships for glass blowing, for production blowing or cutting, because you
Right.
have to have 10 businesses in the country prepared to offer them. And if you
Uh,
don't have 10 businesses, so if you have a business, say, on that critically endangered list
mm,
from Heritage Crafts, you cannot get any support to pass the knowledge on, and yet it's
mm,
at its most critically endangered, and that seems to me to be crazy. So people who might be prepared to say yes, we might be prepared to support that. We might be prepared to support a person. We might be prepared to support a program to
mm,
pass on skills in whatever industry that may be. I would say
mm.
please let people think about that sort of thing.
Really
I
interesting.
changed I
And
changed
yeah,
it. I changed your bit.
yeah,
Sorry.
no, it's fine. But it is really interesting. I think because normally what I do, but I think you've shown this already, is I normally sort of push back, not, or rather re-ask the question of do you feel like you live by your own advice now? And I think it's clear that you do, because you are, by going through this experience and going through this process of stepping back as CEO from Cumbria Crystal, um, and then embarking on a sort of a mission to make sure it succeeds, but sort of from the background, still, um, by doing the work with sort of brand ambassadorship and so on. You are doing that. If somebody's saying no, then go and ask someone else. You are doing that. You are taking the risks. You are trying, and not accepting no for an answer and that kind of thing. So yeah, maybe in a slightly longer way, we got there. So it's
Brilliant.
it's been interesting it's been a lot. Well, as I say, I've learned a lot about glass, which I never thought I would learn. And now I think, I think the only thing left to do really is to go and fill this up with something delicious, and Sam.
That is a very good idea.
Yeah,
Too early in the
Chris.
day, but we still have
Yeah,
this
maybe
evening.
slightly too
Yeah,
early. Yeah, at the time of the recordings, but maybe later on. But yeah, Chris, it's been wonderful having you on. Thank you ever so much for giving me your time, and yeah, I wish you all the best for the future, and hopefully our paths will cross in the not too distant future
lovely.
in real
Thank you very
life.
much indeed, Don. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been a
thank you.
pleasure. Thank you, and thank you to
Thank
everyone
you.
who's listening.
Yeah, thank you. So that just leaves me to say, if you'd like to find out any more about Impact or the work we do, go back and look at any old episodes that we've recorded in the past, or perhaps you'd like to visit Cumbria Crystal's website. You will find all of the links that you need in the description of where you found today's episode. Thank you one final time for Chris to joining me today. Thank you, Chris.
My pleasure.
And until the next time, take care.
Hey, you're on my mind, you know.